All right, welcome. Today, we're going to dive deep into the hidden, fascinating, and, let's be honest, sometimes pretty bizarre world of food flavorings to figure out what's really making your favorite snacks taste so good. I mean, have you ever really thought about it? How do they manage to get that perfect cheddar cheese flavor dusted onto a potato chip? Or what in the world is that mysterious, natural flavor that you see listed on pretty much everything in your pantry? Well, today, we're getting the answers. So before we can even get into the world of flavorings, we first have to tackle what flavor itself actually is. And trust me, it's probably not what you think. See, flavor is so much more than just what's happening on your tongue. It's actually a super complex sensation that your brain pieces together. It takes the signals from your taste buds, sure, but it also mixes in the texture or mouthfeel of the food, and, this is the big one, your sense of smell. Yeah, you heard that right. Smell is the absolute superstar of flavor. Just think about the last time you had a really bad cold, when you couldn't smell a thing. Food probably tasted super bland, right? Kind of like cardboard? That's because you were only getting those basic taste signals, sweet, salty, sour, without all the rich, complex information that your nose is usually sending to your brain. Okay, so if flavor is mostly about smell, the next logical question is, how do scientists capture that and put it in our food? Well, let's pull back the curtain and step right into the flavor lab. This is where we meet the heroes of our story, the flavorist or flavor chemist. These are the scientists who can deconstruct and then rebuild the taste of literally everything from roast beef to a perfectly ripe strawberry. As one flavor chemist, Joe Paragini, puts it, their job is basically detective work, really cool detective work. So how does this detective work, actually work? Well, first, they take a real food, let's say it's a fresh peach, and they run an analysis to map out its exact chemical composition. Then they have to pinpoint the specific molecules that create that signature peachy smell. From there, it's all about recreating that unique aroma fingerprint in the lab, blending and tweaking the formula until it's a perfect match. And believe me, this isn't just a bunch of guesswork. Flavorists use these incredibly sophisticated machines like a gas chromatographer to separate all the different aroma molecules in a flavor. Then they use something called a mass spectrometer to identify exactly what each molecule is. It lets them map out the precise chemical DNA of a flavor, down to the tiniest fraction. And what they find is pretty wild. It turns out that a lot of those signature scents we know and love often come down to just one or a few key molecules. You know that candy banana flavor, like in a Laffy Taffy? That's almost all from one single chemical, isoamyl acetate. Or that creamy, summery scent of a fresh peach? A big part of that is thanks to a molecule called gamma-decalactone. It's literally chemistry that you can smell. All right, so the flavorist has worked their magic. They've perfected the recipe in the lab. But how does that get from a tiny beaker into the thousands of bags of chips on your grocery store shelf? Well, it's time to scale things up. Well, that lab recipe gets sent over to a massive production plant where they mix it in these huge batches. They use solvents to make sure the flavor will actually mix into liquids properly, and they're running quality control tests constantly. And if a company needs a powder, say for a chip seasoning, they use this giant machine called a spray dryer. The whole point of all this? It's simple, really. Make sure that flavor tastes exactly the same every single time. Okay, so we've seen the lab, we've seen the factory, which brings us to the big one, the question you see on every single food label. What is the real difference between natural and artificial flavors? The answer is probably not what you think it is. Okay, you ready for this? Here is the big secret of the entire flavor industry. A natural banana flavor molecule and an artificial banana flavor molecule are often the exact same chemical compound. Your nose, your brain, your body, they literally cannot tell the difference, because on a molecular level, there is no difference. Wait a minute, if they're the exact same molecule, then what is the difference? Why the different labels? It all comes down to one simple thing, the source. To be called a natural flavor, the molecule has to be derived from something that was once living. A plant, an animal, you get the idea. An artificial flavor is that identical molecule, but it was built from scratch in a lab, usually from something like petroleum. And this is where it gets even crazier. Natural strawberry flavor does not mean it came from a strawberry. Not at all. It could be made from chemicals that were extracted from, say, tree bark. Or maybe it was produced by fermenting rice bran. As long as the original ingredients came from something in nature, it can be legally labeled natural flavor. So for the folks making the food, the real-world difference really just boils down to a few key things.
Natural flavors are way more expensive to get, and their taste can even change based on the season. Artificial flavors, on the other hand, are cheap to make, totally stable, and perfectly uniform batch after batch.
Which kind of begs the question, right? Why go through all this trouble in the first place? Why do we even need these manufactured flavors at all?
Well, it really comes down to four main things. They are much cheaper and way more consistent than using, say, real fruit juice. They're also more stable, which means they can survive intense cooking and processing without losing their taste. And finally, they let us get creative to make fun flavors like blue raspberry or bubblegum that you just can't find out in nature.
And the big question on everyone's mind? Are they safe? Well, both natural and artificial flavors are heavily regulated by agencies like the FDA. They go through a ton of safety testing and are considered perfectly safe to eat in the tiny amounts that are actually used in our food. So the distinction is all about the source, not about safety.
So, there you have it. We've gone from our own taste buds all the way to a high-tech flavor lab and back to the grocery store aisle. We've learned that flavor is this incredible illusion our brain creates, and that the word natural on a label, well, it might not mean what we always thought it did. So the real question is, knowing all of this, are you going to read those food labels any differently from now on?